Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. The Blast Awesome Major has finally concluded. We've watched 32 teams traverse and progress through a rough 3 weeks to make it to the top. And in the end, we found our victor. And so I think there's a lot of upsets, a lot of surprises from a lot of these teams. And I wanted to put together this tier list, kind of going over if teams kind of met their expectations going in. And I'll try to explain the expectations that each team had going into this major, and kind of were the results, how the results kind of reflect those expectations, and whether or not they did better or did worse than them. So yeah, we're going to be ranking 32 teams. I've sorted them out based off of their current HLTV ranking. So I think that's already a good indication as to how, we're going to be traversing through this. Also, yes, I am in currently a different setup. I am back home. I've graduated from college. And so I'm going to still try to make content. I still want to make CS videos. But right now, there's a player break, and I need new things. So if you have any suggestions, put them down in the comments below, and I'll look into making some more content. So yeah. I broke down everything into 5 different categories. There is impressive. This is like superseded my expectations. A little bit better than I thought. Like, the team did better than what was expected of them. There's typical, which is like they just met expectations. There's subpar, where they went below expectations. And then there's holy fuck disband, which is like absolute disaster class from the team. Compared to the expectations that they had going forward. So yeah. Starting off, we're gonna just go from top to bottom. Vitality. Would be surprised to say it was any other major but a Vitality major. That was even prior to the last minute phase aura changes. But yeah, I think on paper, everyone was saying that Vitality were probably going to be winning this major. Vitality were on a win streak, and they kept up with it for the most part. They only lost one best of one to Legacy throughout the game, but because of the nature of like best of ones, like they were kind of bound to be upset, and people were kind of like low-key predicting it. Obviously, I guess everyone was putting them for 3-0 to go through, and them going in for stage 3 was like closer to like 3-1 because they lost that one match to Legacy. But like, I think winning the major just kind of outweighs any faults that they really had. Like, sure, they lost one map, and they've lost a couple maps too. I mean, in the playoffs, they lost against like MOUZ, and they also lost against MongolZ as well. But they won the whole thing. I think everyone saw the writing on the wall. It was pretty obvious. So I think just for that, we're gonna say that the Vitality winning the major was typical. MOUZ Sports. We are gonna criticize MOUZ for their run because starting off with stage 3. They started on day 1 with an 0-2, meaning that they lost the first 2 matches and were on the brink of getting eliminated. They brought it back into qualifying for playoffs 3-2, and then they made it all the way to semifinals, beating out Spirit in a very, very tense match. Very good, but like, I don't think MOUZ were fully there as a team. Like, the fact that they even had to just like struggle to make it to playoffs in the first place, like, already kind of shows signs that, the team was not like fully there. And also, I think that they also could have closed out their game against Spirit on map 1, even though that they did end up winning the series. And they had a really nice run during like the semifinals against Vitality, where they took the second map like wholeheartedly on Inferno, but they just got absolutely shit on Train. But I think people were kind of unsure how that series would go overall, but Vitality would probably win. But yeah, I think that MOUZ definitely could have been much more cleaner in their stage 3 run instead of nearly getting disqualified. And I think they also could have brought in more of their series bit better for kind of the number 2 team. So I think just for that, we're gonna probably have to put them in subpar. Team Spirit. With Spirit, I think like a big thing is that they had a really nice playoff. They had a really nice stage 3, going 3-0. No worry, no care. They just annihilated everyone that they played against. But then when it came to the quarterfinals against MOUZ, they had a really back and forth mirage. you're just like watching all these clutches from a bunch of the players, especially Zontix. Zontix was popping off. I think like, you know, they were popping off. They were doing good, and then like map 2, Dust 2, they just get shit on, and map 3, Nuke, they get shit on, and Brolin goes like 4 kills on the entire map, and they still win on MOUZ. Brolin goes 4 kills on MOUZ, and they still win. So it really just goes to show that, like, you know, I think like for the most part, people were saying that MOUZ had Spirit's number, even though a lot of people were putting Spirit to go above and beyond. And I think that's just because of the recency bias, just because they looked really good in the groups and MOUZ were not. But Spirit just did not show up at all for the playoffs. And I mean, I think just like statistically, they were bound to just like lose against MOUZ. So I think it was very typical. They were expected to make playoffs, which they did. And I think just unfortunate seeding just kind of put them against like the second best team. So I'm just going to say that, you know, Spirit definitely could have played better. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the Spirit improves or like gets worse. MongolZ. MongolZ, oh my beloved MongolZ. I love you guys so much. I think with the MongolZ, right, a lot of people had them going into playoffs for sure. The run was not the cleanest, like they went 3-2 instead of being full on group stage merchants, but they did really have like quite tough competition to go against. However, once they made playoffs, they actually decided to show up. Senzu realized that, you know, being on the playoff stage is no different from playing a group stage, and he was just activated and on. And the MongolZ were just, they were all contributing. They were doing what they needed to do. They were just taking names, and up until basically until the end of the first map of like the finals, MongolZ were there. They were locked in. They were taking names. They literally decimated Vitality on Mirage, and it was just like people, the roar of the crowd in Austin just supported them so much because they were looking really good. And unfortunately 910 just kind of shit the bed, and everyone else kind of did as well, Dust 2 and Inferno. But you know, MongolZ really showed that they were no longer these like group merchants, and that they could actually play playoffs. They made a great run, and they had a nice like fight against like the #1 team right now. So honestly, surprised my expectations. And so, you know, MongolZ a little bit better than I thought. I love my boys. They did good. They did good. Aurora. Aurora is kind of I think Aurora is very disappointing. But I don't really think that they completely shit the bed. Going in, people were kind of unsure whether or not to put them for playoffs. I put them for playoffs because I thought that maybe they would get their shit together, but unfortunately they were not able to. They went out in stage 3 on 1 and 3. Very disappointing. But there's a few other teams that are a bit more disappointing. But you know, I think Aurora definitely could have done much better, and unfortunately they did not for the caliber of what their team is. Like, they were just not able to get their shit together, and they went out pretty early on stage 3. So very disappointing. Navi, you know, I think Navi was honestly a little bit better than I thought. Obviously I think that this comes in with a few factors, coming especially in regards to the next team we're going to talk about. But like, I think because of the level of opponents that did not end up making to stage 3, Navi had a very good shot to make playoffs, and sure enough they did. Especially with like the slew of results that they've had that have just been like completely negative for the most part. You know, this is honestly, it was good to see that, you know, they actually made playoffs, and so, you know, a little bit better than I thought. Obviously not the most peak performances, not like the ones that you saw from when they won the major like a year ago. But, you know, it showed that Navi, like, actually, the fact that they even made playoffs is just like, you know, it was a little bit more surprising because it was kind of debatable whether or not they were gonna make playoffs in the first place. So yeah, Team Falcons. Holy fuck, disband. Like, okay, you assemble a super team with Nico and MONOZ and 2 players from the heroic roster of Kixen and Tessus. And Tessus has been looking fantastic, by the way, on Falcons. And then you get Magus as well. And you go out in stage 2, 1-3, nearly 0-3 had OG not choked their match against them in the 0-2 on the round 3 stage of stage 2. But you know, most people wouldn't expect to go against Falcons of all teams. Very disappointing to see. You know, you literally, they looked like Falcons as a team looked like they were gonna be like the rivals, the potential rivals to Vitality, and they weren't even close. They didn't even get to play them once in the major because they couldn't even beat like, you know, lower, like kind of lower tier teams that, you know, you wouldn't expect to see. But it was just really sad, really depressing, and you know, it was just unbelievable. Just that this whole team just like shit the bed. Such a disappointing result from this team, and you know, you'd expect them to at least make playoffs. They were not even close. Not even close. They didn't even make. You'd think that they may be potential finalists, potentially semi-finalists, and they weren't even there. They didn't even get to the playoffs. Okay, so yeah. Faze Clan. I think with Faze, I think everyone going in, like, there's a lot of kind of uncertainty how well Simple would perform. I think through each stage, starting from stage 2, Faze were ramping up slowly. You'd see Simple slowly increases like stats more and more throughout each group stage. And a reset for stage 3, and then he'd go back up again. And so for playoffs, he unfortunately did not lock in fast enough, and they got shat on by the MongolZ. Really disappointing performance from Simple, but you know, I think like even though like the circumstances, like I think people would expect them to make playoffs with that roster. I think in general, just like the uncertainty that surrounds Simple as a player, just because he has not played consistently in over like 6 months, it was kind of like, okay, like how will they do if they're going for this Hail Mary move? And so I think for that reason, I'm gonna probably put Faze like a little bit better than I thought, because you know, you weren't sure whether or not they're gonna make playoffs, and the fact that they even did just like goes to show, like, you know, it was kind of surprising despite like the circumstances of the team. FURIA, you know, I think like I'm gonna say that FURIA were a little bit better than I thought. Like if you saw some of the recent results from Astana, like you knew that they were a very like contestable team. Like they had the makings, but you weren't really sure like whether or not they were gonna be able to carry it through for the most part. But they just smoked. They came in and they smoked. They went 3-0 in stage 3. Nice clean run, similar to Spirit. And then they got Pain in the quarterfinals, and honestly, they should have won that game. They lost, pretty disappointing. But I think all things considered, like similar to kind of the Faze move, very recent roster change, and so for them to kind of get their shit together and to even make playoffs, even though it was like so uncertain like how the team would perform in general, like, you know, it's really good. It's very surprising. I don't think I'm a FURIA hater anymore. But you know, really good result from them. And you know, you wouldn't have expected them to make playoffs, but you know, they did. G2, I think I'm also gonna say that, you know, a little bit better than I thought, because you know, you weren't going in, you weren't really expecting them to make much of an impact. Obviously they don't have Nico or Modesty in their team. You get Heavy God instead. Heavy God's a very good player, but not like the star caliber as like Nico. And then you got Hades on the op, and Hades was a bit of a stinker, not really hitting any of his shots really. But you know, I think like for the most part, like you would have never expected G2 to be on the brink of making playoffs against the MongolZ, no less. But you know, you would have. I think I was considering them possibly as like an 0-3 pick, maybe 1-3, but 2-3 isn't too bad, honestly. Like they had some good results for some of the teams that they played against. I'm sure like they were on the weaker side, but like, you know, I'd say a little bit better than I thought. Like, you know, they were close. They were close to kind of making an impact, and yeah, like it was surprising to actually see them like look up that they can kind of hold up and stand their ground for like what was left of the roster, basically. Pain. I think we're gonna have to say that, you know, Pain are also a little bit better than I thought. It's looking pretty stacked right now, but I assure you, I think the rest of the tier list is gonna get pretty filled in a bit, and we're probably gonna rearrange some few things around. Yeah, a little bit better than I thought. With Pain, like, you know, you weren't really sure like how well this team was gonna be performing like going in. But because they start off in like stage 2 and they were not looking the best. But you know, they got their shit together. Pain got their shit together. Even with some of the poor results that were like plaguing the team for the entire season. They got their shit together. They pulled through and they made it all the way to the semifinals where they played against the MongolZ and lost. But, you know, really impressive run. You make it through stage 2, you make it through stage 3, and then you beat FURIA in the quarterfinals. So, you know, what more can you ask for? I think, like, it was never in doubt that they would make playoffs, but I think with the state of the team, or just because of, like, previous history, they seem like the ones that would make playoffs, if anything. But, you know, just with more recent history, it was kind of a little bit more surprising, basically. But yeah, they surprised me. They did good. VP, I think we're going to have to say VP did... I think they did typical. I think we could say VP did typical. VP put in stage 2, I believe. Nice clean run through that stage. And then they made it to stage 3. They go 2-0. And then they get disqualified 2 and 3 of stage 3. And I think, you know, you can argue that the team may or may not have been set up to make playoffs. But also it was very reasonable for them not to make playoffs because they got Egotronic running the ship. People were kind of unsure whether or not to make them going through, and I think a lot of people would probably lean more towards like the team being on the weaker side to not make it through. And sure enough, they did not. They kind of bombed out, even though they had like a nice layup to qualify for playoffs. Typical VP, typical Egotronic. 3D Max. I think we're probably just gonna say that 3D Max subpar. Definitely could have seen like a stronger showing from the team. It was kind of unsure whether or not you could see this team qualifying. I think most people would probably put them on the weaker end, just because like they qualified through stage 3, but they just did not look like a formidable team against like the other opponents whatsoever. And you know, sure enough, they went out 1-3. Pretty disappointing. They definitely could have played much better, but they unfortunately did not. And I think right now, like, the team is kind of semi imploding right now. So yeah, Legacy. I think we have to put them in impressive. We just have to. This team was not even supposed to make it to this major. You know, Legacy going in, no one had hopes for them. A lot of people were putting them 0-3. I didn't think that they were going to 0-3. But, you know what? They proved everyone wrong. They blitzed. They got through stage 1. Nice and easy. 3-2. Then stage 2. They go 3-0. And then stage 3, they were so close. They were very close to qualifying for playoffs. And imagine that. Imagine if Legacy, the complete underdog team, made it to playoffs. That would have been insane of a storyline. So yeah. And Legacy were the only team to take any win off of Vitality throughout this major as well. 13-3 on Inferno, just like clean. So, you know, really, really fantastic run from them. They did great. Dumao, you know, aura farming, every time he's screaming, people getting mad at it on Twitter. Liquid, I'm gonna say subpar. And it was a very disappointing run. 0-3 from Liquid. 0-3. Would I say that it was not part of their expectations, though? I put them as my 0-3 in my pick'ems because I knew that the team was not going to be looking well. And sure enough, they just did not. And the only reason, and I guess you could technically say that this is typical Liquid, but I think like you would expect that the team would be able to even just pull a win together, and they just were not able to. And you know, it's a really disappointing result. We're not really sure like what they're gonna do with the roster. NAF probably has to go though. I think that's one of the most important things. NAF has to go. But yeah, disappointing result from the team. And you know, you would expect them to maybe prove the haters wrong and to not go 0-3, but they just kind of did. So they just were not performing Liquid were not performing at all. But I'm not going to say that they completely shit the bed like Falcons did. Heroic. I think we're going to probably put Heroic in typical because, as I said in my pick'ems videos, they were the kings of tier 2 CS. They were looking to decimate like everyone that they ran across in tier 2, and they might have a good shot of like into stage 2. And sure enough, they went 3-0. And you know, it was debatable whether or not they would make it into stage 3. Unfortunately, they went out 1-3, which is a little bit more disappointing considering like who they went up against. But you know, I think for the most part, like this team had very like limited stock. They had pretty good impact on the results, and you know, actually putting their money where their mouth is, basically. I think making stage 2 for the most part. Pretty solid result considering like the caliber of the team and what, you know, people were like. I think people knowing like, okay, like, you know, they were probably gonna get shit on by better opponents, and sure enough they did. So MIBR, subpar, very disappointing run. Did not have any of the same energy that they did from Shanghai whatsoever. I was hoping that they would, but it just was not strong enough from them. Very disappointing. Insani carry was just not enough. They beat Falcons. And that was like the one impressive run. That's the one impressive win that they had. They had, I think, one other win as well. But Lynn Vision. I'm actually gonna say, I think Lynn Vision, we could probably say, are impressive. The run that they had was exceeded my expectations, and I think many other people would not like have said that, you know, Lynn Vision were gonna go to stage 3, and were fairly, I would say, pretty close. I mean, they went out 1-3 on stage 3, but you know, like they didn't go 0-3 at all. They had some solid wins. Obviously, the most prominent one being the win against Falcons on Nuke during stage 2. That was a really good one from them. And you know, they literally started all the way from the bottom, similar to Legacy, and made it up like all the way to stage 3. And you know, just very much like an underdog run, and you know, good results, very impressive to see what they did. I was very doubtful of them, just because they look like a bunch of like onliners, basically. But they proved that they have their same capabilities on LAN. I'm excited. I love, you know, we love to see Chinese CS succeeding. Emilia was aura farming and was just captivating every single fan, both like Brazilian and non-Asian, whatnot. So yeah, very good. Very nice run. Very good to see Lynn Vision succeeding, and I'm just happy. I'm really happy that they did as well as they did. Bait, I think, like, you know, I think with Bait we could probably say that it was a little bit of a typical run from them. I think people know that they would have like solid impact going in, and you know, I think people would say that they were a much more favored team from stage 1 to make it to stage 2. And sure enough, they did. And they were actually pretty close to also making stage 3 as well. But they just kind of shut the bed a little bit there. But, you know, pretty good result from the team. And, you know, yeah, pretty good result from the team. Got some wins, had some losses, but, you know, got some solid wins against, like, the opponents that they're going against. And, you know, making it a little bit further than what most people would kind of expect for like tier 2 CS in general. Pretty good. Nemiga. Actually, I'm gonna say a little bit better than I thought. Just because they did get shit on stage 3, going 0-3. But you know, very good result from the team. Kind of similar stories to like Bait and like starting from stage 1 as well, and like taking names throughout like each stage like pretty consistently. Like, you know, very solid, and a lot of the players on that team have like now have like name value basically. So like Lear and Sway have like probably impressed the most people, and I think like Zoe is getting looked at by Spirit currently. So just goes to show like even though they definitely could have made like a bit of a further run, I think it's a very impressive run nonetheless. TYLOO. I think I love my boy. I love my boys on TYLOO. G fan right here. But you know, I think like we could say TYLOO very much had like a very nice like layup to go through stage 1 very nicely, and then stage 2 kind of a little bit more debatable. And sure enough, they were unfortunately able to make it through. I think they were quoted to, or I think Amelia quoted that TYLOO just had like higher ranking basically, so that kind of screwed them over in the matchups that they had, where they just had to play like tougher opponents in general compared to Lynn Vision. But you know, I think for the most part, very solid run from TYLOO. You know, they made it. They didn't completely bomb out, so I think that's like the important part. And G was just aura farming like he normally does. G was just having that cultural impact and was just showing why China is truly #1. So yeah, we love G, we respect G, and for that reason, you know, typical G aura farming. So yeah. Complexity. Ooh. I think we have to probably say like complexity was probably like a subpar. The only reason that I would, even though that like their run was like 1-3, and so many people had them going 3-0, including me, or just like passing through. I think we just gotta put a lot of value to Halzerk, and if anything, they're probably like raising Halzerk's contract because they realize like, oh shit, he really does do that much. Just Junior on the roster just did not do them service whatsoever, and Complexity had a very shitty run. We're gonna talk about a few of the other teams, but it's surprising to see those teams get a better placement result than Complexity, even though that they look like they were doing like fairly decent. So yeah, very disappointing. I'm not sure if we're gonna see any roster changes from that team, but if anything, it just really goes to show how much Halzerk has like importance on that roster. So you know, subpar result from Complexity. Wildcard. I think we're also probably gonna say like Wildcard are also like subpar as well. They were looking good at the start of stage 1, going 2-0, and then they went 2-3. I think like with Wildcard, you know, people were unsure like how they were, just because like obviously everyone's talking about like the 13-0 that they faced against BetBoom. But like I had a feeling that Wildcard would like get a couple wins, and sure enough they did. But they just were not able to like get their shit together for like a best of 3, and yeah, it just looks like things just kind of fell off. Right now, there's news that the team is imploding. It's kind of very disappointing result from Wildcard. I think they definitely could have made it to stage 2, but they just were not able to push it over the edge. FlyQuest. I think we're gonna also say FlyQuest subpar performance. Regali, I don't think he showed up as much as he should have. Nedic was hitting some shots, and the team went 2-0 as well, but they were just not able to get over the line. They went 2-3 in stage 1, and it was just so disappointing to see. Like, you would think that they actually had like a solid chance to, out of the teams that they were playing against, that they should have made it over them, but FlyQuest were just not able to get their shit together. I'm not really sure what else to say. People were calling for their heads, roster changes. Who knows what will happen? But yeah, I think FlyQuest definitely could have. I want to say that they completely shit the bed, but they just played. People were not stepping up when they really should have. So yeah. BetBoom. I think with BetBoom, we could probably say it's like a typical performance. Solid contenders to make it through into stage 2 from stage 1. And then just like once they got to stage 2, they just got shit on, basically. I think maybe people would kind of expect them to maybe take like another win or so. considering that Boomage got shit on while on Cloud9 during Shanghai, I think it was just like a telling sign that this was going to similarly happen to the team as well. Very unfortunate placement overall, but like, you know, I think people had them solidly going through stage 1, and sure enough they did. So they met their expectations, and then they unfortunately were not able to go further than that, but, you know, nice showing that, you know, solid baseline there. I think a very important thing, they got to get rid of Axile. Axile is kind of single-handedly bringing that team down, and they would probably get better results if they just did not have him. M80, I'm probably going to say that, like, M80 were looking subpar. I think, like, going in, like, a lot of people did not have them making it into stage 3 whatsoever. They started off at stage 2. But yeah, they ended up going 1-3. They got like 1 win, and then they just like lost out to the rest. I mean, I feel like this is kind of like a typical M80 performance, honestly, but I think like just hoping to see any of the teams showing up, and they just did not at all. So like, you know, this is just a very, very disappointing result to see from the team. They might get some roster changes, maybe to just kind of revitalize the team in general. But yeah, it's just very disappointing result. OG. I think we could probably say like OG, probably like typical. I think like OG were looking clean enough to qualify for stage 2 in general. People were slating them to make it through. I put them going in. But yeah, I think like, you know, they went in, got into stage 2, and then they just got shit on as well, making it 0-3. But like I said, who would you expect to go in your round 3 matchup but like fucking Falcons of all teams? And I mean, they were close to winning that game as well. They just were not able to bring it over. But OG had a pretty good showing during stage 1, showing that like they were like very qualified to make it in and make it past this for the most part. But they just were not able to kind of overcome and make a deeper run. So yeah, NRG with just the R. I'm gonna say that they were a little bit better than I thought. If anyone has been following NRG, they have not looked good in any way whatsoever. Like, you could look at the results of that team, and you're just like, oh man, they were not looking good. You would think that they would get shit on like 0-3, honestly, but surprisingly, they were 2-1 at one point during stage 1. They went 2-3 in the end, but you know, pretty good results. Like, even just getting 2 wins in general for that team over some of the, considering like some of the opponents that they faced. Pretty good, pretty solid run from NRG. Definitely could have been much better though, so we might see that team rebuild. You know, I think like a fairly solid result. Imperial. I think we're gonna probably put Imperial in subpar. I mean, I put Imperial in my 0-3 pick, and they were very close to going 0-3. But Metizport just shat the bed even worse. They just were not looking like they were there at all. They just got shat on during stage 1. I think like if anyone from that team showed up, they would probably have like a better result. But no one showed up on Imperial for the most part. Chinggis Warriors. I think so many people had them going 0-3. I did not, because I knew that they would just not. I've been watching a few of their games, and they just have not completely bombed out. So, like, honestly, I would say that this result was very typical of them. Because I did feel like they were probably going to go 1-3, but they would at least take like 1 game off. And they did. They beat Fluxo. They secured my 0-3 pick, thankfully. Shows that there's potential for like the region in general. And I don't think we're going to see too much out from them. But, you know, I can't say it's necessarily a fairly good showing, but I think, you know, they set a standard. Hopefully we'll see more of them. That's my hope at the very least. Fluxo. I think with like Fluxo, very typical. Like, if you look at that team and you just see the people that they were going against, like, okay, they were not going to be doing good. And sure enough, Fluxo showed that they just were not good. And they went 0-3. I don't think like necessarily is expecting for them to do any better. I would put them in a little bit better than I thought if they literally just like took a single game off or something, but they just piece of cake. They were a piece of cake. BESTIA. I'm gonna have to make a new category right now. I feel the need to make this tier for just BESTIA because like it's like a statement basically, and they couldn't even qualify for the major. It just could not even qualify for the major, and it's not even the players' fault. Okay, the organization just like completely mismanaged their visa situation, and then they start like crying about it on Twitter, and just like everyone like wants to support them, obviously, for them to make it through. But if the organization is just gonna fuck the players over with like their shitty like management, and the CEO is gonna throw like a hissy fit about suing people in court, like, you know, it's just like just shut up the yapping, bro. Just shut it. And you know, it's really disappointing to see this team not make it through. I'll be honest, I probably would have put them going 0-3. But you know, it's very kind of just like sad to see that they couldn't even show up, even though that they made it basically. Finally, and surprisingly enough, I like how Metizport is behind BESTIA, even though BESTIA didn't even qualify for the major. But Metizport, holy fuck, disband this team. I mean, I didn't think that they were necessarily gonna make it into stage 2, but I was like, surely they get a win, right? They're a European team. Surely they get a win. Surely they like roll it back from like the MRQ and everything. Nope, they did not. They did not, and they just got fucking shit on. 0-3, completely shit the bed. Just poor fucking results. Just disband this team, and they're already disbanding. Like you could already see, like 2 people have already left the team, and it's just like, yeah, that the team is dying. The team is dying, and it's just over for them. Shit is so bad that when you see the jerseys that they were selling at Austin, the only ones that were left after day 1 were Metizport's jerseys, because no one was buying a Metizport jersey. Not after like their shit show performance, basically. So yeah, just disappointing. Just you know, blow up the team, blow up Metizport. Yeah, no, I don't even think it's like management fault. The players just shit the bed. They just fucking shit the bed. So yeah, really, you know, pretty disappointing to see. But yeah, this is my tier list of all the teams meeting like expectations for the major. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said earlier, please feel free to suggest any video ideas or what I should work on next. Just because I still do want to be making CS content in some way. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.